to talk with you again today.
Oh, me too, Karen. And Karen and I have been talking about doing this for several weeks. We actually have not known each other for that long, but we became fast friends and we were having conversations we felt like other women needed to hear, other people needed to hear. And so we're going to have one of those conversations today. What is our title today, Karen?
Your body is listening, and like to everything you say.
Everything you say, every word. And I was on a business retreat. You and I got on the phone and it was 90 minutes later and we're like, this content is so good. What I love about our conversations is you have read so much that I have never even heard of, and you've already enlightened me with some great resources. I know the viewers will absolutely love to hear what you have to say, and I know I've shared a few things with you that are like, oh, I haven't heard of that person before, or I haven't read this before. So let's bring those resources together and share them with our audience. But you and I, even just before we went live, said this conversation is going to look a little different because we are going to be very direct,
Right.
very clear. I think there's a lot of noise out there right now. There's a lot of fogginess that people are walking into 2021 with. And so we've got to focus down and talk very clearly about the essentialness and the importance of understanding wellness as we're going forward, because it's much different than it's ever looked before. So I'm super excited. We are doing 3 of these. This one, next Wednesday at 11, the following Wednesday at 11 MST, all different topics. Karen and I are going to get together and share some great information with you. And we're looking for questions. We're looking for interaction.
Yep.
So please, we are both going to be keeping our eye on the comments as we are streaming live to a couple different platforms. As we are going, please just say hello, drop your question in there. We would love to just stop whatever we're talking about and focus on you and whatever kind of questions and concerns you have. Now, Karen, you shared a story with me the other day that I absolutely loved, and I would love for you to share that with the audience. And it was a little something about you trying to get to sleep the other night.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, so I have always had a history of sometimes getting my brain going, really going and churning, and it's hard for me to go to sleep at night. And sometimes it's just hard to stay asleep. And the other night was one of those nights, and I was telling Dr. Heather, what I do often is I pick up my headphones and I'll turn on something, usually not music. I'll turn on an audiobook. And sometimes it's one that I really want to go to sleep. But this time, for some reason, I picked up one of my favorite authors. I knew that I wanted to listen to her. It's Carolyn Mace, because we were going to be talking about energetic body. And she has a book, which I highly recommend. It's on Audible. It's a series of her workshops called Advanced Energetic Anatomy. And so I thought, okay, I think that might just either give me stuff I need for this show, or it'll put me to sleep, one or the other. So, right? So either way, it's a win. And I turned it on. And here's the thing. Up until that point, the thing that had been keeping me awake that night was I was kind of like going into this scarcity mode. I have a little bit of a problem sometimes with poverty mindset. And I was going into the, oh my gosh, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And all of it relating to money. And so when I literally turned it on to chapter 2, because I've been through this whole book before, not remembering what it was about though. And when it came on, she goes, how's your relationship with money been? And it's so cool on multiple levels, because not only did that whole chapter, it was like she sat on the end of my bed that night and said, girlfriend, you need to listen to me. I need you to hear this. And she honestly had my undivided attention, because I knew that this was like a divine appointment. That was something that I really, truly needed to hear in that moment. And I was going to listen. So I would love, our bodies know when we need something. There was something guiding me directly to that particular Audible book, that particular chapter.
I love that.
That was not in my consciousness.
Yeah.
And
with your background, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Karen, she's been a coach, a chaplain, an energetic medicine practitioner for the last 10 years. But the cool thing about you is you are left and right brain, because you have a history in technology. You were a Microsoft senior exec for a long time. And I love that your brain works together in that network of appreciating both of all of the logical and then the feeling. And that's so cool to me. So as you just said, your body knows it's never separating mind from physical body. It's they work
Right.
together as a team. And you shared something with me. This is a little off kind of what we planned to talk about, but I loved it so much when you shared with me about it was an author you talked about who describes the body in a certain way as we move. Can you share that? Because that was so great.
Right. Oh my gosh. So there's a Jungian psychotherapist here in Boulder, Colorado. I live in Denver, not too far away. Her name is Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I love to talk about her because 50% of it is I love saying her name. But she has a book out called The Dangerous Old Woman, which is a great hook and a terrific title. One of the major sections of that is about the joyous body. And it was such a great way of talking about mind-body connection because we come from a long, I would say a long tradition in this world, in many, especially Western religions,
Mhm.
where it is the idea is that the body is something that's meant to be discarded. It's like filthy rags. It's not something that we treasure, and we often speak to it in ways that are not very kind. And the fact is that we come to this experience on earth as a soul having a human experience. And it's not that we happen to be trapped in this inconvenient physical form. What comes with us to this incarnation that we have is this consort.
Yes.
This is the consort, the body consort, and it has its own knowing, and it has its own and there are so many things that back this up in science and in observed practice. For example, when I walk out into fresh air and there's this rush, right? That's my body having that experience and sharing it with me.
Yes. Oh,
You know
I
what I'm
love
saying?
Yes, I
So
do. It's funny you say that. I have a sauna here, and I've been recently. I live in Arizona, but we don't. We have a little pool in the background. It's in the backyard. It's not heated. It's ice cold right now. So I've been doing sauna and then cold plunge, and um, the communication of your body to your mind and brain when you jump in cold water is so cool. Like I love that. And so I love that you used cold air as an example of your body, goosebumps and things like that happen.
mhm.
That's your body communicating with you.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah, so, we're gonna talk about body listening,
yeah,
but the body is a knowing thing.
yeah.
The body is an entity
Mhm.
of its own. We are paired together in this lifetime, and so one of the things that, um,
Mhm.
I think we wanna talk about a little bit today is how our body hears us and how we can be very intentional about the way we communicate with it.
I love that. And
And
you use the word paired, and I want to camp on that just for a second because you also sort of referenced it in sort of Western attitude toward body. It's a partnership. And I
Mhm.
think we spend so much time hating, ignoring, or
Abusing.
dismissing and disrespecting
Mhm.
in a way that is so incongruent with what it's supposed to be. I
Mhm.
think we need to acknowledge that before we even dive into what does listening sound like, or
Yeah,
what
yeah,
does your body listening sound like, and what does you listening sound like. So
yeah.
I love that you said that. And the dangerous old woman. One of the I as soon as you told me about that, I downloaded it on Audible, and I love that you shared with me. She's never published a book. It's all storytelling, and so it's lovely to listen to her voice is so great. And I am so grateful you shared that resource with me. Please go and download it on Audible, The Dangerous Old Woman. And I'm not that far into it, but I'm loving every minute of it. So thank you for the share on that resource.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's an incredible. Her trademark is her voice and her storytelling.
Yeah.
And you'll see why as soon as you start listening to her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is so good.
Yes.
So when you say, you know, we talked about this as the body is always listening. And one of the questions I get is, do my emotions and thoughts have an effect on my physical body, and how does that work? Because I think that's new to some people, is not that there isn't some connection there, but the degree of the connection. So can
Yeah.
you share a little bit about how do emotions and thoughts have an effect on my physical body? How does that work?
Yeah, like you said, it's a partnership. It's a pairing.
Yeah.
So not only does our emotion show up in our body, like listen, when let's say you and I were going out together to have coffee, you'd had a terrible week. I could see your body tell me that you had had a terrible week.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm paying attention, your body is definitely affected. And so there's some very interesting case studies and visual case studies that are done where the coach is working with an individual, and you can see that the individual, like their body is showing, I am depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling really low. I am not elevate. I'm not in an elevated state. And their chest, the way I like, you can't really see it on the screen here, but the way
Yeah,
I
but
like
I
to
know
show
it.
it to people is that there's a place where the body is hiding. It's the body's trying to hide you.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows up with, and this is really important for people who are on the computer all the time, it shows with your shoulders. Your shoulders are all pulled, you can't really see, but the shoulders are all
Yeah.
really pulled forward like this, right? Head is kind of down, chest is sunken in. It's almost like there's something in here that the body's saying, oh, I'm gonna, I'm feeling this, and we're gonna kind of hide now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can absolutely momentarily and permanently change that by shifting your physiology, right? You know this really well. And
Yes.
the way I like to talk about it is, this is when my heart is hidden and my heart light is not shining anywhere. It's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it all to myself, and my body is reflecting that. But when I come back out and my shoulders are back, my heart is going this way and this way.
Yeah. I love that.
And yeah.
I was just going to say, as you were thinking about that, I hadn't thought about this when we talked about it before, but the Amy Purdy work in power posing is a sign of the opposite. So the idea that you can power pose your way into shifting hormones, raising
Yes.
testosterone, lowering cortisol. So if we can do it that way, it works. It's a two-way street. So if I'm just walking around with bad posture, naturally my emotions and hormones are going to reflect that. If I power pose, if I, or whatever, like you say, lift up and look forward, physically you're telling your body, no, I'm good. I'm ready, And so I love that it's kind of a two-way street, and we can affect it from both ends.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And Jordan Peterson, we're going off on a teeny bit of a tangent here, but
That's
Dr.
okay.
Jordan Peterson, in his 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, which another book I highly recommend, his rule number one is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And what he gets into there is lobster physiology. So being the top lobster, right? Being the top lobster in lobster dominance hierarchy means you get the best food, you get the best territory, you get all the girls. It's like kind of like the best place to be, right? It's where you want. That's what you would strive for as a lobster. Lobsters have very similar nervous systems to ours, in that they're super primitive, obviously, but they have the same kind of neurotransmitters that we have, in particular the neurotransmitter serotonin. When a lobster wins a battle for dominance and wins the territory, right? He actually will get more serotonin in his nervous system. And you will see his posture change. And Conversely, a top lobster who finally loses the dominance fight and gets put back at the bottom of the totem pole, sometimes his entire nervous system will dissolve and have to regenerate in the form of a low totem pole lobster. I call it
Oh my
low on the
God.
totem pole. I don't know if I should use that term, but it's the lower in the dominance hierarchy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's science behind all of this that really shows us that um, you our body is listening to what we are telling it in whether it's our conscious or subconscious, and our body is communicating back to us. And if we the way our body works, it's like, oh, you want more serotonin? Awesome, I'm on it. Like, let me do that for you.
Yes.
It's that easy.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
that easy.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I always think whenever I'm talking to you, I just want to go like this for like an hour. You are a library. It is wild. I just want to have a pen and paper like the whole time just to write down all the resources. So thank you for sharing all of your wisdom that you have gained from all the different roles and experiences that you've had. It's
Well,
awesome.
well, thank you. And likewise, it goes likewise. I have a question for you because I know that you are very familiar with someone that I'm not super familiar with, and I would love to hear more about it. The Bruce Lipton, about the three-part stress model, and I would love to
Yeah.
hear more about that.
I love what I have listened to with Bruce Lipton. I have been wanting to read more of his books. I have not, so I'm certainly not an expert. But what I am an expert on is his presentation on his stress model, which when I listened to that, like I think actual explosions went off in my head because I
I,
was like, yes. Because when you try, as a practitioner, I've been a chiropractor for 25 years and moved out of that into what I do now. When you're explaining the burden of stress on a body, to be given such an articulate way to explain it to a patient so that they understand the impact it's having on their body is far more than just their shoulders are tight. And so he
yeah.
goes into this three-part model of stress. So we'll use the example of a lion jumping out at you from a bush. So you're walking by and you hear a rustle, rustle, and all of a sudden a lion jumps out and it throws you into fight or flight, which we all understand is our sympathetic nervous system firing off. And that's our survival mode. We need that so desperately. But the problem is that it's meant to be a one-off. So we're meant to have a lion jump out of us and then we go back to camp, we sit around the fire, we recover, we restore. We don't have lions jumping out at us all the time. But the issue is now we live in a society, in a world, a culture where we do have lions jumping out at all the time, or at least our brain perceives that.
Yes.
So he has this really simple three-part model where he talks about three things happen when the lion jumps out at you, or the boss yells at you, or you're concerned about your finances, or whatever it is. And it's this: blood is immediately shunted out to the extremities because your body doesn't necessarily know if it's a lion or a dead lion. And so what happens when that happens is that your core is where all of your cellular regeneration and your natural processes take place. And if it's devoid of the normal amount of blood that it should have, then it's not going to work as well, and we're not turning over cells like we should be, which is huge. The second is this: when the lion jumps out at us, or the deadline, or the boss yelling at us, or whatever it is, the hypothalamus tells the adrenal glands, it says, dump cortisol. Dump cortisol, that's going to help us. It has all sorts of benefits. It reaction time, focus, all sorts of great things that are wonderful. But cortisol, by its very nature, downregulates immunity. And downregulating immunity right now may not be in our best interest. And so constant cortisol dumping is just shifting your ability to respond and react to what we need to be immune to into the tanker. The lion, your body doesn't care about bacteria. If a lion is jumping out of you, that's going to become the lion's problem unless you can get away. And so getting away becomes the priority for your body. And so that's the same thing when you're hit with stress. Cortisol dumps, immunity downregulates. Number 3, when the lion jumps out, blood is naturally shunted to the back of the brain. In the back of the brain, where our primal brain is focus, reaction, and those sorts of innate responses to get us out of the way. But where we're not anymore, as far as our blood is concerned, is the front of the brain: logic, reasoning, intelligence. So there's a reason why terrorists or captors keep their people terrified, because then they can't think logically. They can't use their intelligent thought to create solutions of how to get away. So they keep you in a constant state of fear, because in a constant state of fear, you're just thinking reaction and just, really not thoughtful, intelligent, creative logic reasoning, which is what we need. So that model for me really helps me explain to clients, yeah, we're not just worried about your shoulders getting tight or chronic bad posture, all of those things. Those are our big concern. But look at the long-term effects of what this is doing to every cell in your body. So that was something I really wanted to share that I thought was important. What do you think about all that?
Yeah. Well, I'm totally on board with you. I mean, the cortisol, the whole set of regulatory hormones and everything. This is one of the reasons why I don't watch horror movies,
Yeah.
because my body can't tell the difference
And
between.
and I don't think anybody's body can tell the difference.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
So I have like apparently like a very effective cortisol dumping mechanism, but for me it's like I just can't say, I can't come down from it. I can't undo it. I don't like that feeling. I don't like having that feeling.
Yeah, and
So
what we
yeah,
practice, we get good at. So when when we have lots of stress, reactions, our body gets really good at responding to stressors. And I love what you said about the horror movie, because I think it goes back to something you said earlier, where if you are exposing, if something is bothering your mind, it's bothering your body.
yes,
And so if you're reacting to a horror movie, that has a physical effect as well as a mental emotional effect, and that's detrimental. And so we don't get out unscathed, just because we think it's created a little anxiety in our brain. No, that dumps everywhere.
yeah.
So I love that you brought, such a sound example. Thank you.
Well, and there's one other thing too I want to mention about it, because being that I come from a spiritual care tradition,
Yes.
and the there are people who are not having that experience of, the lion jumping out, the bad boss or whatever, right? But there's something else that we all carry with us internally, and it generates the same kind of stress response, I think. I'd love to explore this a little further,
Mm-hmm.
but, those nights when you're lying in bed and you wake up, or you can't go to sleep, and it's like, oh, that was really you're reviewing all the things that you did in the past week or the past month or the past lifetime that were not smart moves, right? We're going back and back on that. We're we're dealing with, how are we going to work our way out of this? We're stuck in a scarcity, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
scarcity model mindset. And I know we talk about this a lot, but the thing that really speaks to me on this is when we go into what I would call survival mode. Survival mode is, the lion is jumping out at you,
Yeah.
the bad boss is yelling at you, or it's also, I don't have enough. I can't pay my house payment. I can't pay my rent. I mean, this is a big issue for people, a lot of people, unfortunately, right now.
Yes.
And there are archetypal
Mm-hmm.
energies
Mm-hmm.
that we all embody, that our body embodies, that speak to us when we go into survival mode. So, and it's very interesting, let's see if I can try to pull them all up on while I'm on camera and not looking at my notes. But the saboteur,
Mm-hmm.
the prostitute, the inner child,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one more. It's like the judge, but
Yeah.
there's these four characters that kind of live with us all the time, and their voices can get quite loud. They love to torture us
Mm-hmm.
in all of the things about, I can't do this, I'm not smart enough, I don't, that whole thing about imposter syndrome is a survival issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make it through this. And it affects our body. You can feel it in your body. Your body hears that and goes, ooh, it's time for survival mode. Like, what do we have to do to hunker down? Oh, cortisol. That would be a good thing, right? And
Yeah.
so you're dumping it in the middle of the night when your body's supposed to be resting.
Yes.
And but here's the good news. I think here's the really good news. When we become aware of where these things come from that are affecting us, whether it's an external, like there's something speaking to us from the outside, or affecting us from the outside, like the lion idea,
Mm-hmm.
or something that we carry around with us internally, like all our archetypal energies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at least with the inner energy, you actually are the CEO of that committee,
Yes.
right? And so if you say, look, I'm not going to feed you anymore,
Mm-hmm.
you guys are misbehaving at night. Don't,
or whenever.
I don't appreciate you like interrupting my
Yes.
life and keeping me unfocused and keeping me awake at night and not getting enough rest. I'm starving you
Yes.
until this is over.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not giving you, and then we have a chance to sit back and say, what are the things that I do that feed them? What are the things that I do in my life, my daily life, that actually contribute to their energy, grow their energy, as opposed to minimizing their energy? Because it's really, when I say starving them, it's really saying, you are not supposed to be the dominant voice in my head.
Yeah.
This is not what living this life is about. This is not what a joyous body is about,
Yeah. I
right?
think I think that brings up such a good point of, when I got comfortable talking to the different voices in my head and didn't feel silly about it, I really started to do some great personal work. And
Yep.
so giving yourself permission to first acknowledge there are different ages of you in your body, there are different archetypes, there are different whatever it is that resonates with you, and that you can have conversations with them, and it's very powerful and it's influential and it's transformative. I love that, and I love that you turn and face whichever archetype is talking too loudly. And I think too. Do you agree? A lot of times, it's a very primitive uh, attempt to protect you. So I think of inner bully. When an inner bully is talking to me, she is trying to protect me because she thinks I'm going to go out there and make an ass of myself. And so she's like, "You can't do that.
Hmm.
You're not capable of that," so that
Yeah.
I won't do it, so that I won't get hurt. And so I wonder too if, so to turn and go, I know, I got you. I know what you're trying to do. But I've got this and you can be quiet now. I like that.
I have definitely done that.
Yeah.
And I think that some of them are more looking out for us, like the saboteur and the inner judge. They, to some degree, are like, um, they all come from a place of scarcity and a place of lack of potential.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that they don't see the potential, and so therefore they're there to create a barrier to stop you.
Yeah. That's an
So
important distinction.
yeah, I think if they're not really protecting you, they're underestimating you,
Yeah.
and trying to prevent you from being an ass because they don't see your potential. So
Yeah.
it's really important to recognize that that's what they're doing,
I love,
um,
that.
and to not let them have that voice, because they can't see the potential. They can't. They're in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, you're working on, where do I live? Where do I eat? Right? How do I pay my bills? That is survival mode. That's not potential thinking.
Yeah.
That's not the thing that, our body is an accomplice in
Mm-hmm.
helping us reach the potential. We have to recognize that our body has to be able to help us get there,
Yeah.
and to um, have that conversation that says, what is my wildest dream? What is it that I believe was my sacred contract when I came here to this place and time? Why?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that I'm here to do? And and if you are allowing your potential to really go for it, what will happen is that you will get the vision of your purpose that is so much bigger than anything you you think you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you know that it's really your vision and
Yeah.
it's just about the right size. But here's here's the deal. Let's come back to that body, right? The whole thing about the body is we really have to recognize that we're not powering through this with our mind. Our body is it is the consort. Our body is what gives us the ability to manipulate all of
Mm-hmm.
this. Our spirit will continue and endure even after this body is gone, but we won't have the ability to instantiate and make things happen in
Yes.
this temporal plane because we won't have this beautiful,
Beautiful.
consort accompanying us. And so what do we have to do to fully equip this body and give it everything that it needs in order for it to help us reach that incredible dream we have?
Wow.
So,
You had an experience at Microsoft that gave you kind of a wake up call. Like I love hearing you talk, and I think, oh, what was the path that brought you to this place where you have all of this incredible insight and you've
yeah.
clearly done tons of work. And so you had some kind of wake up call, some sort of mind body connection. Can you share that with us before we move on?
Yeah, so you mentioned, you kind of alluded to this, but I probably as a child I probably thought I would be a Barbie doll dress designer. I'm a creative at heart, right? I think and I was born into a family of origin where it was extraordinarily important for my parents that I not be a creative and that I be a scientist.
Mm,
And so that's what forced me into this. Um, Now I see it as a gigantic advantage, but I had to train both sides of my brain.
mm-hmm,
Um, but it did make it difficult when I worked in the tech world
mm-hmm.
because when you're working with a lot of people who are very left brain thinkers and you're a right brain thinker, communications can be challenging, whatever. I had sort of a struggle. I was a general manager at Microsoft, but I will admit to parts of it being very difficult for me. And it was difficult to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I was listening to my inner saboteur and and not so much my inner child, but my inner child. I just told her to shut up, and the saboteur was like had full reign, right? And and the upshot of that was that I struggled, and I needed to go to I asked to go to a therapist. I
Mm-hmm,
didn't have to ask, I just went. But
mm-hmm.
I signed up to go to her name was Louise, and she was kind of amazing, and I was talking with her over a period of time, and one day, this was in the fall, I said, this is what it's like going to work every day for me. It's like being kicked in the stomach and having my legs swept out from under me.
Mm.
Oh, did my body hear that? My body heard that, like, I'm on it. By January, I was in Georgia at a conference. I was speaking. I did not feel well. I was really feeling sick. Flew back to Redmond. Was all getting ready. Still felt lousy. Was getting ready to go to work on Monday. Found out, and I got up. I could barely stand up.
Oh,
And finally, I'm like going, this is like not probably the best. I got to get to work. And that's when the cat jumped on my stomach, and I was like, "What?" And I drove myself to the doctor's office, and from there, I drove myself to the emergency room where they took out my appendix.
oh my gosh.
So 10 days, I was out for 10 days. And the first day back, I decided I was going to go visit my friend. He was the chief security officer at Microsoft at the time, Mike Howard, and I went up to go visit him. And he was on the third floor of one of the Microsoft buildings. Decided I would get back into shape that day and exercise. And so I go chugging up the concrete stairs in the back of the building to get to his office. And at the top of the stairs, my legs go out from under me. I go down the concrete stairs, managed to save my brand new laptop,
Oh.
but it didn't never touch the ground, but I had to drive myself again to the emergency room to get my knee stapled back together.
Oh my gosh.
And so I happened to have an appointment with Louise right after that. And I walked in to see Louise on crutches, hobbled in to see Louise on my crutches for my appointment after I was done at the emergency room. And she said, she goes, I just want something to be very, very clear. I hope you're listening because this can't be lost on you. She said, 4 months ago, you told me going to work was like being kicked in the stomach and having your legs
Oh
swept out from
my
under you.
gosh.
I want you right now to go home and start thinking very happy thoughts.
Oh my gosh, isn't that's such a great story. Oh
Well,
my word.
she's like, this mind-body connection, your connection between your mind and your body is so real. You have to take it seriously. I mean, she really kind of put the fear of God in me. She goes, what are you going to wait? What are you going to do? Go until you drive off a cliff? Like,
Yeah.
you have to
Mhm.
pay attention. And she goes, I want to know when you're going to resign.
Mhm.
That was the hardest thing ever. And I loved that job. As hard as it was for me, I kind of guess I'm a glutton for punishment, but as I loved what I was doing and I loved what the mission and the purpose was behind what I was doing, I didn't really want to leave, but I knew that I was not in the right place.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so for everybody's benefit, I think, that was what propelled that very difficult
Gosh.
decision. And ever since then, I've been like, wow, this is so real.
Mhm.
And I think every single person, if they're listening, as they're listening to this,
Mhm.
they will recognize all of those places in their own lives where they've had this feeling in the pit of their stomach. That is your body talking,
Yes.
right? Your
Yes.
body is hearing what's happening. Your body is aware of what's happening, and your body is reacting.
That is amazing.
And
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah. I have a story of a colleague of mine who, when her kids were little and they couldn't quite identify their emotions of how they were feeling, she taught them a way to describe it. And she used their family cat as an example. She said, when we pet the fur this way and it just feels really good. And when you pet the fur backwards, she doesn't like it, you don't like it, doesn't feel good. So from there forward, she say, which way's your cat fur going? And it would help them feel their body, tap into their body and go, oh yeah, my cat fur is running the wrong way right now. So then she could teach them, okay, so you want to listen to that. You don't want to be friends with that person, or you want to not do this anymore, or you want to do this. And so I thought that's such a great way to kind of tap into that inner knowing. And I think, Karen, that there's lots of folks probably watching who are like, this is great, but I really don't know how to listen. So do you have any tips for those that are like, this is new, like I haven't really spent a lot of time listening to my body, how do I do it? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, there are this is really important too for anybody who's experienced trauma,
Mm.
because one of the things that will happen is you'll lose the boundaries of your own physical body. You have to learn where those boundaries are again. That is a very significant piece of work. I've been through it myself. I had to retrain after I fractured my arm in multiple places. I had to retrain my nervous system to know where the boundaries of my arm were.
Mm.
Um, so it really does help to have a professional who can help with something like that. But for things that are less significant, that are the everyday, like I am so used to using my mind and thinking my way through things, empowering my way through things with my intellect and my mental capability. You want to just start to have that awareness. Like when something happens and you're going, where am I feeling this right now? Where in my body is this happening?
Yes.
It's not a dumb question. It is
No.
actually reestablishing that communication link between
Yeah.
your your mind
Yeah.
and your physical body. And there's very common places. I mean, who hasn't had stress sweat,
Yeah.
right? Who
Yep.
hasn't had what we used to call, when I was a really little girl and transcendental meditation for kids came out,
Oh.
and they would call it the cold pricklies,
Ah,
right?
Yep.
Who hasn't had that experience of the hair rising on the back of your neck?
Mm-hmm.
Of having that sink, all of these are phrases we use all the time, the
Yeah.
sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach.
Yep.
My skin is crawling.
Mm-hmm.
I just got the shivers.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are your body,
Mm-hmm.
your joyous body and your body intelligence communicating. And
Yep.
so part of it is just to make sure that you know that it's happening
Mm-hmm.
so that you can pay attention to it. At least that's how I would suggest, just getting started. If it's more than that, working with someone to help you kind of practice
Yeah.
and be a sounding board is really helpful.
I think that's good too. And one of the things I'll teach as well is, especially if someone doesn't have any kind of meditation practice or anything, is just to sit in a chair, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and start at your toes and just, what are my toes feeling? What are the feeling in my feet right now? What are the feeling in my calves right now? What are the feeling? And just go there, go to that
Mhm.
place in a visual way and kind of check in. And it's amazing as you start to reconnect how much more sensitive you become to what your body's asking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's super essential. This discussion brings up an interesting point. I'm curious about your thoughts on this. So one of the things I encourage some of my clients to do is get food sensitivity testing. And the reason is because often what happens is someone will, they'll eat a food and eat a food and eat a food, and their body reacts to it. But then when your body sees that you're not responding, it turns the dial down a little on the reaction, or it makes that reaction just much more diffuse that it's almost not recognizable, like fatigue or sleeplessness or grumpiness. And when we do an elimination diet, we take out those offensive foods for 30, 60, 90 days, and then we retest them. The reaction has gone up to a 10 out of 10 again because your body now has had a break and has also had the chance to now respond to this offender that it hasn't been diluted with over the last 90 days. And I think about that as we start to tune into our bodies, that at first it may feel like some of the things that you're sensing might amplify a little bit at first as you're starting to tune back in. But it will even out. But I also think just on the opposite side of that, for those of you who are like, I'm good, I'm fine, and you're not doing regular check-ins, it could be that your body has just dialed down the message and said, look, you're not listening. I'm not going to keep hammering you over the head with this. So be aware that feeling fine doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to spend some time tuning in and listening. We all do. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're the expert on that, Dr. Heather. But I will say that they're if you think of yourself as an entity with a body and your spirit and your mind all kind of working
Mm-hmm.
together, that how you want to live your life. Do you want to live in black and white or do you want to live in full color?
Mm-hmm.
When you continually ignore the signals,
Mm-hmm.
everything gets dialed down. The color gets dialed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And we get really used to that.
Yes, we
People
do.
in the tech industry get super used to that,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience. And that's, I think, why we have 2/3 of the US workforce is self-identifying as burned out right now.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that's going to happen as we start to go give permission to yourself to start to retune the color and
Mm-hmm.
bring all that back in so you can experience it. It's going to feel a little weird.
Yeah, definitely. And I
And
think, oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's going to feel like it's like, in sensory input overload. I don't want this.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And it'll be easy to just recognize that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because take it from me, you don't want to get to this stage of life and be so used to living in black and white that you can't figure out how to live the rest of your life in color.
Yeah.
So that's what this is really about. It's about living all body,
Mm-hmm.
all mind, spirit, body, right, together.
Yeah, I totally
That's
agree.
my that's my spiritual take.
No, and if I didn't if I didn't say that clearly, I was definitely using the food sensitivity as an example of emotions are going to kind of do the same thing. I think if we are just too busy driving forward, we're not listening, we ignore, they either get way louder or they sometimes will just dial down and go, you're not listening to me. So I love, I really like the idea of some stillness to just kind of start to tune into that and just start to listen and have an awareness, as you said.
Yeah, I have
There's
a question for you. I have a question for you. Now it's my turn to ask you one, right?
okay.
Because you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you're 25 years in this in private practice,
Yeah.
and you have a very finely tuned ability to use your senses to read other people. You can even
Yes.
tell. You can even make a pretty educated guess on after you've met somebody where they work. I would love to hear more about
Yeah.
all that
You and I
because that
talked
really
about this.
fascinates me.
Yeah, I was joking with Karen when we were chatting at one point, and I'm sure other chiropractors can attest to this. I live in Seattle, and where I live within spitting distance is Costco, Microsoft, Expedia, T-Mobile, Amazon. And I had all the patients all the time from all of those companies. And it got to the point after 15, 18 years of working with them that I would joke with them that I don't need to see your chart. I know where you work based on what I feel in your body because there were patterns there. Patterns of energy that I think Microsoft puts out, patterns of energy that I think Amazon put onto their employees. And that manifests physically in people relatively consistently. So another example of that, a little removed, was I had 3 female patients at slightly different times, and all 3 of them had the strangest compilation of symptoms, very resistant to care, which was unusual with the compilation of symptoms that they have, but it was very, very similar. And I didn't really put it together until I saw 2 of them sitting in the lobby at the same time. And they're sitting in the lobby, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen these 2 women together. It's interesting. They both have very similar issues. Well, they caught each other's eye, and there was not a very, very friendly look between them. And I was like, what's that all about? And so about a week later, a patient of mine, male, came in and said, oh, my current wife and my ex-wife were sitting in your lobby together. That didn't go well. And I said, well, that's interesting. And then he said, you also see one of my ex-girlfriends. I said, I literally, these 3 women had exactly the same symptoms, exactly the same compilation of things going on. And I firmly believe that this person puts out a certain energy in a relationship. And we've seen this before in relationships where physically we are going to manifest the stress that comes from the energy in the relationship. And that was the first really hard example I saw of, wow, we really can manifest our stress, and we can manifest it in ways that are consistent and inconsistent. But I just thought it was such an interesting story
Wow.
of how our bodies are listening and how we respond to certain energies between people and that kind of thing. So yes, party trick. I can tell a Microsoft employee over an Amazon employee. I know, it's a gift.
I love that. That's like I put your hands on their shoulders and you can tell.
Yeah, and I'm like, exactly.
You know, that thing about, that's another thing that I love talking about and working with people on because once I became aware, I went through, I haven't completed all of it yet, but my healing touch training,
Mm,
and I used to do healing touch on veterans at the VA.
mm,
And I could literally feel where energy boundaries were
mm.
working and where energy boundaries were leaking, like
Oh,
blowing your energy out through
yeah.
your perimeter, your energetic perimeter, right? We see,
Mm,
like right now, you and I see each other, we see our physical perimeter, but we have an energetic body. And that energetic body, in the case of like those girlfriends and
mm.
wives, that energetic body interacts with other energetic bodies. And
Yes.
there are literally cases, and I want you all who are listening to hear me on this. You have people around you, are bad juju.
Mhm.
And your energetic body will and you will, if you're especially if you're a sensitive, you're
Mhm.
gonna bring in all that energy. You're gonna bring it into your perimeter, and it's going to stick with you.
Yes.
Just like you saw, right?
Yes.
You actually had evidence of all of
Yeah,
this.
very hard example. Mhm.
And there's ways that you have to put up your boundaries and enforce your boundaries. So not only do we have to enforce all kinds of other boundaries, but this energetic boundary that says, you're sending this energy. I'm not taking it. I'm not
Mhm.
taking the energy you're sending over here. I am not absorbing it. I am not going to be, your energetic whipping boy. That you
Yeah.
can't, but it will happen. There are people whose energy is that punishing.
Yeah. And
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 go
yeah,
ahead. I was just going to say, going through COVID, where we had lockdown and all of that thing, I think a lot of us have had a chance to reflect on the relationships that are working and the relationships that are not working. We've had a very convenient excuse not to see certain people, but I do challenge you to really consider what people do you want to pull back into your social circle when it opens up, and what people do you know energetically are not good for you, and that you can continue to keep that barrier there. And I think we're at a unique place where we can really do that. And
yeah.
so I love that we talk that again. That was a little off what we were going to talk about, but so important. I think that's fantastic.
Well, it's a great set of resolutions. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things relative to body and energy and physical body and health and mind body connection. And we've talked about a lot of stuff. And this is a great opportunity to reset, especially when we still have a certain amount of lockdown.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think it's super. You teach a course on burnout prevention,
right.
and that burnout is preventable. So before we start to wrap it up, I would love to know, for everybody who's listening, what is your number one burnout prevention tip?
I think the number one thing is there's this you need to have a certain amount of self-awareness. You need to have a certain amount of self-awareness. And I think the thing that most people that I encounter do not give themselves permission to know what they want.
Mm,
We are pleasers. A lot of us are pleasers. A lot of us could be rebels,
mhm.
and the opposite of pleasers. But the thing that I ask people, the question that which seems to be the hardest question for people to answer is, what do you want?
Mm,
And I will hear back all of the things that I don't want.
mhm.
So the number one thing that I would tell somebody is that part of your physical body is in your brain that helps when we tell ourselves, tell our body what we really want. What is our heart's desire? What is our sacred contract?
Mm,
What is our purpose and our mission? Our body actually helps us get it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I know that sounds like so much woo-woo. It's
Mhm,
not. It's backed by the science.
mm,
We talk a lot about the science these days. This is scientific.
mhm.
And um, it will help you identify all of the things within the environment and without you even being aware of it, that will help you to make those goals happen.
Absolutely.
So if there and I'm not a huge fan of resolutions because we're coming up
Absolutely.
on the new year, but I'm a huge fan of setting compelling, juicy goals
Mhm.
for what you
Yeah,
really want in your full color life.
yeah.
And you will find, I just found a slip of paper. It fell out of an old day timer. I was cleaning out uh, some cupboards, and there was an old day timer in there. I'm a terrible pack rat, but sometimes it's very cool. From 1997, where I had written down a set of goals that at the time I thought were impossible. And every single one of them I have met some time ago, not just recently, right? So this it matters to get clarity about what you want. So if I was one thing I would tell somebody in 2021, know what you want. Be
Yeah.
honest with yourself about what you truly want, and don't limit your potential of reaching that by allowing your scarcity and your saboteur and your rebel and your inner child and all of that to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. Your concept of the universe or God conspiring in your favor once, but you have to get clear first. It reminds me of a story when my father passed. He passed at home, and when I pictured the funeral people coming to get him, I pictured like a hearse or something. Well, they showed up in this bright red minivan, and it kind of struck me. And they were very wonderful, and they escorted him where he needed to go. But from that moment on, all I ever saw on the highway were red minivans. I'd never looked at a red minivan before, but I saw red minivans everywhere
Wow.
because it had become significant to me. And so I think part of it is universe and God conspiring, but part of it too is once you get clear, then you start to see the red minivans of where you need to go, what you need to do, and I think it becomes so much smoother for you. Because if you
Oh,
don't, you know,
it even works for you while you're sleeping.
yes,
I mean, it works, it filters everything out of the environment. This is what your body does for you.
mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, and it's just phenomenal to me that you can that this is how we're wired. This
Yeah,
partnership together between, your soul having a human experience and the body consort that comes with you. This is a partnership that's made in heaven
it absolutely is.
and uh,
Yes,
and meant to be together for a purpose.
yeah.
So at any rate, I think that's so that this is kind of a warm up. We're doing a warm up here today. This is
We
the
are.
first in a series of 3. I can't wait for the rest. This has been so much fun. You're doing an event in January,
Yes, I
right?
am.
And there's a whole bunch more of this that people can get by joining you there. Tell me
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
that's going to be.
It's called the Get Your Act Together live virtual annual planning event. And I've done some of these before, but I have to say, Karen, I am more convicted, more possessing a sense of burden about this than ever before because of the state I see people walking through the 2021 door in. They're discombobulated, they're stressed, they're burned out. You know this from the work that you do. And what this event does is it allows us a space of 3 hours to work together on looking at what was working for us, what is no longer working for us, strategizing a beacon goal and action steps behind it, all situated around wellness. But as we know, wellness, well-being is a bridge between, how do we work, play, and live effectively and optimally. And so it's going to be great. We've got a time mapping exercise, a wellness Y exercise. We've got journal prompts and workshopping time, and all. It's going to be exceptional. You will leave feeling clear, confident, and calm with a really lovely filled out workbook that's going to serve you through the rest of the year. So we'll put the link somewhere, and we'll get that up and running. It is bit.ly /ACT event, large ACT, all capitals ACT event 2020. I don't know why I made the link 2020, but it is in 2021, not 2020. And I've got some great people coming already. I'm very excited about it. So do join us if you're interested in doing more of some of this discussion around goals and tuning into what your body is wanting and all of those kinds of things. So thank you for.
I love that you're doing this so much. And I think there's a banner, a little ticker tape or something that's running down below with the URL that you just mentioned. So you
Perfect.
can, there it is right there in front of us. I think that's hopefully
Great.
working. You know what I think is so important here, and I'm going to now imagine me sitting on the foot of your bed having a talk to you, for you out there listening. Wellness is not an option for you for reaching your goals. There's a pyramid that we use in our work, and I know Heather and I have talked about this before, but at the bottom of that pyramid are 3 layers. One of them is your physical health. That's not to say that you have to be perfect, right?
No.
Get perfect in this, but there's your physical health, your emotional health, and your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the foundation for everything that goes on top of it, like finances, how you use your time, and your work, which is somewhere higher up that pyramid. So for those of us who are like chronic workaholics, that is an unsustainable model. And you know this in your heart. Your body has already told you this.
Yeah.
The way to get more gas for the engine, the way to get more wax in the candle, so, is to pay attention to your wellness.
Yeah.
And that is really what you're going to be talking about.
It is. Yeah. I'm super excited. And I am definitely excited. You and I are next Wednesday again at 11 right here. We will post a link beforehand, but just show up here on Karen's Facebook page or YouTube, wherever you're watching. And I am really jazzed to have our next conversation, which, do you remember the name of it? It was so good.
Yeah, it's how to stress-proof your day with certain morning routines.
Yes.
Right? So here's the thing is like, Mark Twain said that if you wanted to start the day off right, you had to swallow the frog.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot more pleasant than swallowing a frog. But it's the way I don't, you know what? I just am such a believer, like make your bed. For me, that's the way that it's like a mantra almost, is like when I make my bed and I get my things in order, it has an influence on the rest of the day. Now we're going to talk about a lot more stuff than that, but there are so many things you can do that will be burnout. They will prevent burnout and make the whole rest of your day go better for you and everybody around you. So you want to be here for that.
That's great. You guys, thanks everybody who watched live. Those of you who watch in replay, we love you guys just as much. And share this with family, friends, coworkers, anyone who you think needs to hear this. Please pass it on. It's why we're doing it. And we feel really strongly about getting the message out. And we're going to continue to do that over the next coming weeks. So we'll see you next week, Wednesday, 11 MST. On Karen's Facebook page or her YouTube channel. And we look forward to it, and have a wonderful, exceptional day today.
And have be well for 2021.
Absolutely.
Kick it off right. Thanks, Heather. See you soon.
You bet.
Bye.